Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this session of Lean Agile Delivery and Coaching Network and Digital Transformation London. This is the last event of this season. Then we will go into the summer break. So we will see again in September. Even if you cannot see the event, the September event is already organized. So I don't want to steal the stage to Georgina, but we will have Alan Kelly in September presenting one of his new ideas. It's a volcano, Alan. Every year has something completely new. So as soon as the event will be available on Meetup, you can start recording. And today, however, we have Georgina. We met a long time ago. I think that Georgina is one of the first coaches that I met in the London community in that incredible period when we had the meetup and what else. We met probably in Code Node in central London or something like that. That was a quite common site for meetup. And so I'm really happy to have Georgina as a speaker today, with a brand new talk, actually, because Georgina was explaining that this is the first time that is presenting this talk. You can make your question during the event that will last roughly 30 minutes, and then we will have some time eventually for a final Q&A session. And so thank you, Georgina. The stage is yours. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you. I kind of got in the back of my mind that one day this is going to be an in-person talk. So my presentation is quite heavy and I'm going to leave it on the screen. It's not my favorite way to deliver virtually, but I didn't have time to put cameos in all my slides. So unfortunately, I'm just going to be like a little floating corner on your screen unless you do some manipulation on your side. So I hope you will forgive me for just being a PowerPoint girly today. So this talk is called Agility is Only for the Small. I'm a member of a few Agile online chat groups, and the guys were chatting about how do you make agility work in like safe environments or larger organizations. And I dropped this one sentence in: agility is only for the small. And then my kids distracted me, so I didn't get to follow it up, and the conversation went without me. And a few days later, someone said, that was really controversial. You should probably back that up. So I thought, okay, I'll do a talk on it to back up this one line I threw out absent-mindedly one day. So when we think of agility, I think we think about speed, about things being small, and being quite maneuverable. If you think in the wild, we're like hares, cheetahs. These are not big objects. And that's what agility is, I think. And it's certainly why this word was chosen when the Agile Manifesto was written. So how do we then turn that into an organizational thing? So maybe timely decisions, being effortlessly adaptable. So if something comes along and changes the market, you can change along with it, and having fewer people. So maybe less than 200. I mean, we all love Dunbar's number. And I'm certainly happy to say that regardless of what your endeavor is, if you are a human organization and you hit 200, you're too big. Agility is a property of being small. Agile's become a bit of a buzzword, really, hasn't it, in business? I'm sure we're all quite aware of that at the moment with all the Agile is dead conversations that we see on LinkedIn and everywhere else. It's touted as a panacea for all our organizational challenges, that it will just fix everything magically. But I think that this ignores the essence of agility, which lies in adapting and delighting our customers. Agility can only be a property of smaller, leaner structures where the decision making is close to the action. we need to be able to see what's happening and make a decision quickly, because that's agility. Bigger organizations with layers of hierarchy and the bureaucracy that causes and almost necessitates slow themselves down. They slow their decision-making ability down because they've become too big to easily talk to each other. I think there was an excellent introduction for me, but I'm Georgina Hughes. I develop team leaders everyone loves. I used to be a certificate hoarder, probably back in the days of the Code Node times. I mean, that was fantastic to hear Code Node. I haven't even heard the name for, must be 6-7 years. So that was brilliant to hear. If anyone's interested, that's my Substack and my LinkedIn. So, from the manifesto's perspective, agility is largely about the customer and about delighting the customer. And this makes really good commercial sense, because if someone loves you, loves your brand, then they're going to be coming back and spending more money with you, which is fantastic. We want more revenue. Excellent. So to do so, we need to consider how the values and the principles of the Agile Manifesto should impact our businesses. So, as with most things in my life, when I think of something, I think of coffee. So let's have a little think about coffee shops that we can experience for completely different reasons. I habitually frequent 2 coffee shops, and I do so for entirely different reasons. The first one is Crazy Beans. It's at the end of my street. They know their own beans. You can see they have roast their own beans. They can talk to you for hours, and they really respond to what the local community wants. And then Costa. Everyone's pretty much UK. Costa is ubiquitous. You know, they're a chain. They're across the country. They've got one roastery in London, and they ship out their beans to everyone. People are trained. There's nothing special. You're ordering what's off the menu, and you're not having a conversation. So when I speak to my local barista at Coffee Beans about the kind of coffee that I've enjoyed elsewhere, she makes recommendations from the menu and then modifies the drink I choose to suit my taste. Brilliant. I love that. When I speak to the guy at Costa, he probably doesn't know much more than he has been trained to know. And, you know, he's going to give me a good coffee, but it's the kind of coffee I want as I'm passing through a train station, or when I'm on a long drive and there's a BP that's got a Costa coffee in the corner. I can even get this out here in the West Country. There are little machines everywhere. I don't have a lovely specialty brewer, maybe 25 miles away from me, but I can go and get a Costa maybe 5 miles away from me. So Costa do delight their customers. They certainly deliver something that's good, but they're not delivering the experience that I want to share with my friends and my family on a leisurely Saturday. So they have given up that intimate relationship with me as their customer in order to have that expansion. So we've all seen the lines of communication diagrams that are similar to spirograph diagrams that we used to make as children in the 80s. Oh no, that actually is spirograph diagrams. This is the one that I mean. So these are the lines of communication that grow based on the amount of people that you add to it. I struggle with this. I don't know about you guys, but this doesn't feel very real to me. I don't know how to look at these and interpret that. So let's go to a party. There are 10 of us around a table at a local cafe or restaurant. And when it comes time to do the toast to the host, we all cheer and chink each other's glasses. It's a bit awkward, and there are some giggles from that awkwardness as we reach over one another, but we're quickly successful. You can think of this as the self-organizing team that is the dream of agilists everywhere. Now let's go to a bigger party. We've hired a hall and we've invited 200 people. Now, I really love this photo. This is a gala in New York in the 80s. So it's a genuine film photo, which is why you've got all that noise and graininess. I love it. I want to be there. It feels so glamorous. But when it comes time to toasting in a group this big, we know we're not going to be able to clink everyone's glasses. And so we don't even try. We may interact with a few people around us, but the rest of the room is kept at a distance. These are like the teams working in isolation towards a common goal without being able to support each other to reach it. You may be able to do something in your own little group, but realistically, you have no influence over the person at the other end of the hall. Eventually, a group becomes too large to enable individuals and interactions over processes and tools. When this happens, an organization is usually around 200 people, and whatever its endeavor at that point, it has become so big that it prevents itself from achieving agility. Now, this is a quote from the Mythical Man Month. It's still a very relevant book today, I think. Men and months are interchangeable commodities only when a task can be partitioned among many workers with no communication among them. And I'm sure we've all think car production line, something similar when we think of that kind of thing. Software production, which is where agility comes from, isn't like car production. If you add more people to that production line, the car will likely be built more quickly. Each copy of any given model needs to be built, and it's only by creating each copy the value for the business is generated, and those customers can be delighted with the car they take home. Even if you've read Project to Product, I'm sure you've seen the car line that's got some agility built into the production there. It's still that one bit can be done after the next bit. It's still waterfall. Software can be copied in infinite time with minimal human labor. The design of the product is what adds value to the business. And it's that value that delights its customers, because in software development, designing and building the software is the same thing. Now, I know if you're really properly classically trained as a software developer, then you're going to be doing like pseudocode and all kinds of awesome things before you actually write the code. But in reality, that's not how it works these days. People are designing the code in the code that they're writing it as they're writing it. And for the copying and distribution, that human labor is largely done by the customer now. It's no longer part of the company who has to print the CDs, get the boxes, find someone to distribute them. If you think of like Steam and all your app stores, it is the customer that is doing the copy work. They're using their store app to get the software on their machine. So really, all the value is coming from the design of the software, not of the build of the software. So if you add more people to a software project, you're not going to complete it any quicker. You're more likely to slow it down, perhaps to the point where it can never be finished. We've seen this with lots of old Prince 2 projects. We're kind of seeing it with safe projects now, where people think, oh, we're doing agile, but no, we're still having the same huge timelines. And then when it's get to the end of the process, it's not great. I'm thinking post office, for those in the UK who are aware of that. Right. I have a note to myself there to not give an anecdote away too early. So the pervasive idea in project management is that by solving problems more quickly can be achieved by adding more people. And this whole more people solve a problem more quickly is old-fashioned. It's untrue in knowledge work, and it can be quite harmful to those who are subjected to it. A more effective way of creating valuable software is to have as few teams as possible to develop all the features consecutively rather than concurrently. This allows for minimal communication points. It maximizes the depth of understanding by those designing and building the product. And it allows for mistakes to be caught early on in the cycle. So there's an example from the FBI after 9/11, where they worked out they had all the information to have noticed 9/11. They just didn't have the software systems all joined up to be able to notice the data patterns. They spent a fortune on a big project, lots of people. It really didn't go anywhere, completely failed. And then 12 people were sequestered into a room, did the software just on their own, and they came out with something in a few months that was much better than they'd already spent a year developing by that point. So this allows for many opportunities for your customers and users to give you feedback about how well you're fulfilling their needs. And that's what we want to know, right? Because if we've got to a year and found out that after 2 months we'd already gone off track, it's been a lot of waste, and it's going to be more difficult for us to sort this out. So organizations can also gain economic efficiencies. You only need to hire a few people when you do this consecutive development, as once one feature has been delivered, the same team can then work on the next one. You can sell your MVP cheaply, perhaps, but you can sell it nonetheless, and then further delight your customers as you keep increasing the available features over time, and potentially at no extra cost to the early adopters. So I have an alarm clock app on my Android phone, and I bought this back when I had a Galaxy S2. So we're probably talking 2012 that I bought it. I still have it. It's gone through 2 major versions. I keep getting updates. I love it. It's one of the key reasons why I can't leave Android, is because I can't find an alarm app on iPhone that's as good as this one on Android. They absolutely are delighting me, and they've never charged me any more. But I'd still happily pay more money, but I paid $350 for this 12 years ago. Amazing. But organizations continue to think that the more teams, the better. Now, my argument here is not that organizations cannot improve. Certainly, many large organizations could become much more adaptable to the changing forces that affect us all. It's hard, but I'm absolutely certain everyone can do it. However, becoming a more agile organization doesn't really make you an agile organization. To achieve a customized experience, you need to understand the customer well and know who amongst those you work with can deliver the things that your customer wants delivered. So this means seeking feedback from your customer often, and having an organization that is networked sufficiently to be efficiently utilized. So the whole needs to understand what is needed and how those needs can be achieved. It's like the difference between toasting with 10 or 200 people at the parties. The smaller organization will be more agile when trying to fill a team's skills or knowledge gaps. This means that the smaller organizations will understand their customers better and delight them faster. It may be possible for the larger organization to do the same, but the customer may have lost their competitive advantage by the time those larger organizations have shifted. However, if your quarterly plans are where you can change, that's better than annual plans, but it's not as good as every 2-3 weeks if you're doing sprints. So if a team gets feedback from their customer that the feature they're building is based on mistaken assumptions, what's involved in correcting them? The agile answer is collaborating with the customer to understand and then to fix that error. Fixing errors before developing further features means you can avoid compounding the problem. In Scrum, as we all know here, I'm certain, is that the team meets the customer at the end of every sprint, hopefully, and receives the feedback and collaborates on the product's future direction. The updated product backlog feeds into sprint planning about where the most value can be achieved next. A small organization of networked Scrum teams can change direction as often as every sprint so that they are maintaining that customer's competitive advantage as it appears at that moment in time. So a little bit about SAFe. I am an SPC. I don't hate SAFe. I'm not getting on a SAFe bashing moment here, but I think it's worth talking about how SAFe looks at this. I think a lot of conversations around SAFe are from a place of ignorance as much as anything. So I hope you might get a little something out of this. SAFe is favored by larger organizations. I don't know why, and I don't really want to speculate as to why, but it doesn't really encourage direct communication between the developers and the customers. It employs some great techniques like Lean UX, user personas, empathy mapping, but these are all customer and user proxies, and they are for the developers to imagine interacting with. Great tools, and they can help any team make decisions in the moment, but they're not the real beings who can tell us if we are genuinely making right or wrong assumptions. And if your organization never considers the customer before you've had a SAFe implementation, then this abstraction of the customer is great. You're going to be miles ahead of where you were prior to SAFe coming in. But this isn't, again, it's still not the same as being agile. True agility cannot be achieved unless the communication lines between the developer and customer are direct. So again, we see that the smaller organization with the ability to have direct communication lines is best placed to delight their customers. So a large part of organizational agility is the ability to communicate effectively with everyone in an organization. When no one is more than 2 or 3 lines away from anyone else, it allows for informal introductions to anyone in the organization, regardless of seniority. This is like how social media influencers use social proof. They go, oh, look, I'm using this product, and then someone else goes and uses this product. Whereas if, say, John went to the CEO and said, I know this person who's got a great idea, I think you should talk to them. There is someone who has given you a warm introduction to your CEO. It makes it easier to go and talk to them. It makes the CEO more inclined to listen to what you have to say. And it's what really allows for that information to flow more easily around a system. And when you have that smooth, transparent flow of information, you get faster, more accurate decision making. Information flows a bit like gravity. Maybe you've heard this before. It comes down easier than it goes up. My theory about this is that it's because each person as goes up has information from many people. It's a many to one information relationship, whereas the information that comes down, it's one to many. It's just easier for it to flow because that one person can give the same message to 10 people. But if 10 people are telling that one person something and they've got to feed it up, they've got to compress that. And that's where you get some information loss. This is SAFe again. This is the second operating system, I think they call it. What they suggest is that you keep your traditional hierarchy, the hierarchy you've already got in place because it is working for you and you do that, it's fine. All your HR stuff and everything, that goes through there, all good. Then you slap SAFe on top of your hierarchy, and it gives you all the benefits of the networked organization that we saw in a couple of slides back. And they try to recreate internal networking opportunities that we find more naturally inside smaller organizations. It has processes and meetings that drive the communicative behaviors larger organizations need to see employees to achieve more agility. Regardless of what you feel about big room planning, It brings together teams in an attempt to help them understand how they fit together as a whole, so that this is something that can be considered an improvement for many larger organizations. Certainly, if you've never met someone from a team working on the same product as you, other than going up to your manager and down again, being in the same room as them once a quarter to do some planning together is, again, a huge improvement, and working towards agility. There is something about this, about creating these constructs so that the communication and the behaviors that we want occur naturally, rather than mandating good behavior and expecting it to be enforced by self-discipline. These forcings of behavior change is a good strategy. You know, I think we've seen it with government try to do it to a certain extent. And it's something that large and small organizations could benefit. This is a lesson they could benefit from SAFE. So you see with the road, you know, you just have a crossing nearby. People will walk those few extra steps to cross where it's safe. Whereas if you didn't have that crossing, people would just jaywalk. Certainly in Europe, I think that's true anyway. So achieving true agility is as complex as the products we create and the systems we live within. It's easier for smaller organizations, just by the very virtue of their size, to make quick decisions, to adapt readily to changing circumstances, and maintain closer, more personal interactions with their customers. The heart of agility lies in the ability to delight customers through responsiveness and tailored experiences, which is more likely in a leaner structure where decision-making is close to the action. Large organizations face significant challenges in achieving agility. The layers of hierarchy and the bureaucratic processes that come with scale are akin to the difficulty of clinking glasses at the large party, where meaningful interactions are limited to those nearby, leaving the broader group and potentially the customer completely disconnected from the people developing the product. As organizations grow, they risk becoming too cumbersome to sustain the intimate, customer-focused interactions that drive true agility. Ultimately, an organization needs to consider its growth and scaling strategies to achieve agility and remain agile. The most agile organizations remain self-managing, which is cited by a few people on the internet as being about 15 people at the most. And if your organization is about to grow past that, then you need to consider why those growth reasons are, and if the cost of the agility is actually something that you think will be worth it. Growth is okay, but there is a price to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgina. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I like the style, the pastel style of your deck.
Thanks.
Any question for Georgina? Can you confirm what Georgina is saying, or maybe you have a different understanding or experience?
I had a few people when I started talking about this talk and thinking about it, who are really like, no, you're wrong. Being more agile is being agile. Like, oh, okay.
I can't find the hand raise button, so I'll jump in. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, that's okay, Corrado. No immediate questions, but thank you for the presentation, Georgina. Really enjoyed that, and the metaphor of the party, I think, is a really superb way of explaining just how difficult it is to make connections. The thing that struck me in there was a concept, and I can share a book in the chat anyway, about what happens when organizations stretch past sort of 150 people. And broadly speaking, there's an idea that Once you get past that number, you get on better by being political than you do by delivering stuff. So DARPA famously in the US is restricted to a small group of people who are only there for a short amount of time. Therefore, their only choice is to deliver something. You can't get known for brown nosing. You can only get known for delivery, which is a sort of slightly different way of doing things. Once you get past that point, I just applause. I completely agree.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question on that? You both have used the word organization. I'm not sure that that's entirely true. So is it team or organization?
I certainly have been talking about organizations. Yeah.
So you think that a large organization like IBM, where people don't have anything to do with one another, nothing to do with products, becomes inherently too large?
Too large to be an agile organization as a whole, not too large as an organization.
But why would that be true if I'm delivering a product, dealing with customers, and have nothing to do with somebody who's delivering something on supercomputers on the other side of the world?
So I think there probably is some nuance that I've purposefully left out here, which could be, is the organization the entire company or is it a value stream? And I think there is definitely a conversation to be had about that, but I didn't have time to add anything in that was meaningful or insightful, so I just ignored it.
Yeah. And I think that comes back to what you illustrated in terms of that diagram that shows communication lines, right? So if the people that you need to communicate with, and it's far larger than a team, it includes any management, marketing, HR, et cetera, that is relevant for the delivery of value to your customer. And hence, I think you're right, it's a value stream.
Yeah.
I think that's the boundary that is probably the boundary that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Question on the opposite end of that then, is there a point where something becomes too small?
Too small for what?
So if smaller is better, can being too small be equally detrimental? And so is it about having an optimal, would it be a bell curve? I'm even if it's a skewed bell curve, where there's an optimal number of people, and then if you start sliding in any direction, bigger or smaller, in terms of that value stream structure, it then becomes less optimal.
Probably. So other than coffee shops, the other businesses I tend to think about are content creators, because I am a millennial and spend most of my life on social media of one kind or another. And I think a lot of them, like Ali Abdul and that kind of crowd, they talk about how when it's just you've got everything. So you're going to let certain tasks fall by the way. You're not going to be high production value of anything, any one particular thing. Your finances aren't going to be in great shape because you're kind of doing the best you can to muddle along. But then once you get to like about 10 people, you're making really good quality products, and maybe you need a little bit more people to support those people, like some admin staff. But as long as you don't get much beyond that 12-15 group, you don't struggle to maintain the self-organization. And it's at the point that you get so many people that they can't really sit in a room together over a couple of pizzas and talk about what needs to be done and sort it out themselves, that you have to add in that layer of hierarchy, and you start to get the bureaucracy of it all because you're getting the processes. So yeah, perhaps there is something to be said about the bell curve nature of it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think coming back to your coffee shop, imagine a coffee shop with a number of people, and then 3/4 of your staff go off at the beginning of COVID. Probably COVID being a bad example because you wouldn't have customers, but let's say they had flu or a bout of something. And now you've got a line outside your door where people can't be served because there's just a limited number of baristas or people to help customers. Eventually customers will get frustrated and walk away. So I think there probably is a bottom limit, but my fascination is just I 100% agree with you. There must be an upper limit.
Yeah.
But out of fascination, I was just curious whether there's a bottom limit as well.
You're probably still being quite agile at that bottom, even if you're quite small and not delivering fast, because you're still interacting with the customer quite directly and getting those feedback loops in frequently.
That's true, but then we're going to start discussing what does agile mean. Okay, adaptability and responding to changes is good. And on a one-to-one basis, you can be optimally agile if you've got one barista dealing with one customer. But at an organizational level, if you've got a number of customers waiting because they don't have a barista looking out for their needs, then at an organizational level, you're not optimally responding to change either. So,
but that
I
may
guess it
be
depends.
good enough for your profit margins.
It might well be. Having spent a lot of time at a coffee shop, especially during COVID, I can tell you that the manager there was always wanting to make sure that customers didn't wait around. So I guess, but anyway, I'll leave it up for people to think about, see if they agree, not agree. But thank you, appreciate that.
May I just add a word into that discussion?
No, definitely not.
I like you already, Mike. Just a word of context, I think, because you can't answer the question of whether there's an optimal number of people for a thing if you can ever answer it without understanding the context of the thing that you're delivering. So I think there's that third dimension to whatever. If it's completely radical, completely new, we're never going to be able to answer that question unless it's retrospective anyhow, because for a start, we haven't got a control in the experiment. We haven't got a group trying it this way and a group trying it that way to compare. So you're a bit sort of
and yet
caught.
we do, because feedback loops and optimizing the ability to get feedback from our customers allows us to self-analyze on whether we believe, and obviously it's a belief, but whether we believe, given what we know at the time, whether we can change anything to improve. So we don't need a control group, though maybe that's valuable in certain circumstances. And maybe it's not. Control groups, again, could suffer with the same problem of trying to compare, say, velocity across two teams.
Totally.
A control group may not be relevant for your team just because it's relevant for another problem domain. So yes and no.
But that's what I mean about our control group, of you can't actually have a true control. So if you spend 3 months working in a particular way with a certain size team and then you try something else, that's no longer a true discussion because you've got 3 months worth of change and knowledge and all the rest of it, and so on and so on and so on. So it's a bit of a bit of an impossible thing anyhow. But to the point, I think, exactly you were making, Georgina, about with knowledge work, the more people you put in, the more you need those effective communication channels, and therefore you're definitely going to lose efficiency if you've got people involved in that sort of degree. So that's what I was sort of talking about more in terms of context in that way.
Yeah, ability to respond to change effectively.
Yeah.
Thank you, mates. Nice conversation. We have time for an eventual last question, considering the program. Okay, so I can make my question. Good. What do you think about the impact of the structure of the organization when you have many teams working together? So it's more about hierarchy and not about network, but what do you think about that?
In software development, I think if you're having a hierarchy of teams, you really, the lines of communication get more difficult because you have a team talking to one person who's then going to misremember and forget everything and then take it to another team. And I'm reminded of a bank that I worked at where the executive director I was working with had 100 people underneath him, And I'm pretty sure he knew every day what every single person was doing and was telling them how to do it, who to talk to. And he felt that he was doing an excellent job. And I think in that organization, he was actually quite a progressive manager, but he was very, one of my friends described it as a seagull manager, if you know what that is, where you fly in, you do stuff all over people's work and you fly out again. So I think those hierarchies, they have their place. It's not that it's an awful thing. It's just it's not very effective. It's not very efficient. And I think often people work around them, whatever structure, whatever system people put in place, other people try to cheat and scam and cajole their way through and find the path of least resistance. And that is often not going up and down a hierarchical chain of command. I don't know if that answered your question. I felt I kind of rambled through that.
Yeah. I think that you mentioned the impact of the hierarchy into the communication, let me say the collaboration across teams. Let me say the counter response in this case is that when you have a large organization, coordination structure are required to maintain the organization itself. So
yeah, and I think what I was trying to in my summary at the end there, what I'm trying to highlight is that I don't think that being agile is the golden standard and that being a huge organization is the worst thing ever. But there is a trade-off, and organizations, managers need to be mindful of that trade-off. And I think a lot of where we see the safe bashing is where people want to see high agility teams and don't like the big organizations trying to achieve more agility. And the problem there is that they're letting the best be the enemy of the good, right? I certainly think that what I've seen of safe organizations is a hell of a lot better than what they've come from before. I'm thinking of the same bank again, actually, because I was working in an area of the business that wasn't bringing in agile. They were just trying to do some grassroots lawn mowing would be the best description of what I was brought in to do, whereas they had a safe transformation going on in a different department, and I was allowed to go and have a look at that safe transformation, and they were definitely in a much healthier space than the guys I was working with, who were being micromanaged, who were being told off because they were coming in half an hour later than anybody else, because the daily scrum was being moved by the executive director whenever he felt like it for no good reason without talking to the team. You go onto the SAFE program floor, no one was talking. And to me, an agile organization should be the noisiest room you ever walk into. No one was talking to each other, but these guys had an autonomy that the people I was working with didn't. They were able to interact with each other in a way that my guys wouldn't dare to. And I think it's looking, as coaches keep saying, we've got to meet our clients where they are, but then we bash them for being where they are and taking on this thing that is better than where they are because it's not what we think agility looks like, where we think they should be.
Yeah, agree. Thank you, Georgina, for making this explicit.
Can I just extend what Georgina's just said a little? Georgina, you talked about agile not being necessarily the gold standard. Did I understand that correct?
Yeah.
And I agree. I think the Agile Manifesto says we should delight our customers basically by delivering value often and early, right? It's delivering value to our customers often and early. That's the gold standard, surely. Agile is just, one manifesto, one view, one paradigmatic view on how to get that. And it's context dependent as well. I think there's certainly domains where waterfall might work a lot better. They certainly, and you could argue whether there's a degree whether lean is fully agile as well. So that's a separate debate. But just coming back to this hierarchy thing as well, I think one thing that I don't see enough of is true devolving of authority downwards. So teams need to be able to control their environments to the degree to which they can optimize their productivity. And managers, a lot of the time, feel like if they're not in control, whatever that means, then they're actually not doing their job properly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's often a failing. But equally, you talk about the hierarchy of an organization and keeping it all in the team, etc. That's also can't be absolutely true. I don't know of a developer or a tester or DBA that I've ever met that wants to look after budgets, that wants to look after hiring of staff, who wants to look after PR policies for a company. And so there's applicability, right? People will do what it is that they love to do. And so if you can allow them to be optimal in their space, I think that's what we try and do. But that means that there are going to be spaces that they can't control, and that we need to then have other people controlling that space. And then there needs to be cooperation. There needs to be people working together. But I agree with what you said originally, which is you want to reduce the amount of cooperation lines as optimally as possible, because that allows you to have a smaller number of people making decisions, and hence you can pivot much more quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I cannot see any hand raised. I cannot see any more questions. So thank you, Georgina, for sharing. I give you the last word of the event, and thank you everyone for joining.
Well, thank you for hosting me. It's been a great pleasure. I learned quite a lot about my own talk as I was going through it there, so I look forward to doing the next iteration.
That's exactly one of the goals, to present something here. So thank you, everyone, and have a great break for this summer, okay, for our events. And you can go to the YouTube channel. Eventually, we have almost 100 videos there. So very likely you will find something useful about any theme of Agile. So good to see you. And we will announce soon the September event that I mentioned at the beginning of the session. So again, thank you for joining and have a great night.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Georgina. Thank you, Corrado. Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.